Hello children. So we were discussing the response to abiotic factors. Living organisms, how do they respond to the abiotic factors that we were discussing. First we have discussed the migration, and the second we have to discuss the suspension. Suspension, different organisms, they tide over the high or the low temperature by different methods. You see different methods just to overcome these high or low temperature. So here we will see mainly three different types, that is encystment, hibernation and activation. What are the three processes of suspension? Encystment, hibernation and activation. Encystment, this term you came across in reproduction in organisms, that is the cyst formation. So usually the lower organisms like protozoans, under unfavorable condition, they lose the water content of the cytoplasm. Fine, they loses the water content of the cytoplasm and it will secrete a hard chitinous cover around itself. For example, if you take amoeba, it will just all the pseudopodia, they will get vanished. That is, they become straight and water content is lost. And the cell will secrete a hard chitinous cover. It will secrete a hard chitinous cover over itself. And this chitinous protective layer has got the capacity of withstanding high pressure and temperature. In this cyst formation, it can remain for hundreds of years, like that only. The cell will be inactive in the body. Inside the cyst, the organism will be alive. Its all metabolic activities will come to the basal metabolic rate. Basal metabolic rate. Basal metabolic rate, BMR. So basal metabolic rate is nothing but all the metabolic activities will be going on inside the organism, but they are at very minimum level, very low level. How much energy or how much physiological activities are required by the organism, only that much activity will be taking place inside the living this cyst. Fine. So in this condition it can survive for hundreds of years, and on return of favorable conditions, these cysts will absorb water. They will absorb water, the water is imbibed by the cyst, like this also you can say. When the water will enter into the cyst, the cell will become active, and here the nucleus will become active and it will get fragmented into many pieces, and every piece is surrounded by a little amount of water, and then this cyst wall will get broken down and many baby animals will come out. Right? That is how the encystment is observed in the animals, lower animals like Euglena and the amoeba. So this is also one method to tide over the harsh conditions of the nature. Harsh conditions mainly include the high temperature and the scarcity of the water. Fine. So this is one method which we usually see in the Euglena, amoeba and bacteria. Okay. So the next one is the hibernation. Hibernation is also called as winter sleep. Commonly we will say this as a winter sleep because the inactiveness of the organism is seen in the winter season to tide over the low temperature. Fine. So it is a period of dormancy during the winter. During winter season, some of the organisms they will not tolerate the low temperature. So under low temperature, their metabolic activities will get reduced. They will be surviving. But you will not see other general activities like foraging. You will not see the reproductive activities. All these activities are not seen. Fine. So such inactiveness during the winter is called as hibernation. So under hibernation, body temperature, metabolic rate and the energy requirement of the organism will get highly reduced. Fine. So this you will see in certain amphibians reptiles, bear, bats, ground squirrel. So you will not see these animals during winter because they will undergo the inactive period. So that is about the hibernation. So the next third process is the activation. Activation is generally we will say this as a summer sleep because some of the animals, they will not tolerate high temperature of the summer. Just to avoid the summer related problems. What will be summer related problems? Mainly the high temperature which is not tolerable by the organisms and the loss of water from the body through the sweat. Fine. That is desiccation. Just to avoid these problems, some of the animals will become very inactive during the summer and that is called the activation. So it is a period of dormancy during the summer to avoid summer related problems like high temperature, you can say heat and the desiccation. So usually it is characterized by the diapause. Diapause is nothing but the suspension of morphological growth and development of the organism. So just all the metabolic activities will get reduced. How much is necessary for the sustenance of the life? Fine. So no other activities will take place. That is called the activation. So you will see activation in certain organisms like some of the insects like crustaceans, mites and the snails. So this is about the suspension. So you have to know this for 2 marks. Sometimes the single heading will be asked for 1 mark. What do you mean by suspension? The harsh conditions of the nature, especially temperature related problems, are avoided by 3 methods: encystment, hibernation and the activation. Encystment is nothing but the formation of the cyst. That is formation of a hard chitinous protective layer around the organism, and this chitinous layer will protect the organism from the harsh conditions, and in this condition it will be surviving for hundreds of years. And again on return of favorable conditions, as usual the organisms will start their activities. And hibernation, winter sleep, that is during the winter the organisms will undergo inactive period, and activation, summer sleep, and during the summer the organisms will undergo summer sleep, and again on return of favorable seasons or the conditions the organisms will become active. Now let us know certain adaptations in some of the organisms which will get adapted to these conditions. So let us go for the adaptations. Fine children? Okay, now we are going to see the adaptations. Adaptations you already have studied in your high school. Adaptation is nothing but just adjusting with the existing environment. And you know that it is a very important property of all the living organisms. If it happen to survive, it must adapt, it must adjust, it must change according to the surrounding. Likewise only human beings also, wherever they will go, if you go to a new place, just you have to adjust with the existing conditions, existing surrounding wherever you are. Otherwise you have to move away from that place. Let's say in the nature also. So what do you mean by adaptation? It is the adjustment with the surrounding. Adjustment of the organism with the surrounding is called the adaptation. So usually adaptation will occur through morphological, physiological and behavioral means. How the organisms will adapt? Some of the morphological features may change, physiological activities may change, or behavior of the organism may change. Behavior of the organism, just I gave in previous class some 2 examples. Now, in the adaptations, 2 types of adaptations are there. That is the phenotypic adaptations and genotypic adaptations. 2 types of adaptations are there: genotypic adaptations and phenotypic adaptations. You know what do you mean by genotypic adaptations? That is, the changes will occur in the genetic material of the organism. If it has to happen, it must occur in the germ cells first. Fine. So Genotypic adaptations usually occur through the natural selection. Nature will select the good characters. Nature will select those characters which favors the organism to survive in the existing environment and help in the reproduction. So such characters are selected by the nature, and these are evolved over a long period of evolutionary changes. Like this only nature will go on selecting the organisms for the reproduction and survival, and those characters will go on accumulating in the organism, and then finally it will get fixed genetically in the organism's body. That is how the genetic or genotypic adaptations will occur and will get inherited generation after generation. And phenotypic adaptations. So these phenotypic adaptations, they are not genetically fixed. That is, these are non-genetic adaptations. That is, these are non-genetic adaptations, and usually we will see them in the physiological modifications. I mean, these phenotypic adaptations will occur through physiological modifications and behavioral changes. Fine. So that is about the phenotypic adaptations. Now let us see some of the examples one by one. Let us just go through the examples. First, here I have taken the kangaroo rat as an example. Kangaroo rat. So this rat is found in the North American desert. These kangaroo rats are found in North American desert, where desert means to your mind it will come the scarcity of the water. All the desert condition you have studied. In the desert, the chuck factor is the scarcity of the water, and all the organisms which are surviving over there must get adapted with that condition. So these kangaroo rat, in the absence of water, outside it will not get water, fine. So in the absence of external source of water, it will get all the water requirement by means of physiological process. So here the internal fat oxidation. So the oxidation of fat which occurs internally inside the body will produce water as a byproduct. Fine, water as byproduct, and that water is sufficient for its survival. Okay, and apart from that, it has got one more important adaptation, that it has got a capacity of concentrating its urine. It is a ureotelic organism. The nitrogenous waste which is formed in its body is eliminated in the form of urea. Fine. So it has got the capacity of concentrating the urea, and then it will eliminate from its body. So why this adaptation is there in its body? So in the elimination of urea, little amount of water is needed. When you compare with the ammonia is needed large amount of water. Fine, in first year you have studied. And urea is needed moderate amount of water. That moderate amount of water is also conserved by these kangaroo rats, so that water is conserved by the body. By these two adaptations, kangaroo rats are able to survive in the desert region. It can be asked in the MCQ, that is NEET or CET, and it is a 1-mark question. Fine. And Allen's rule is there. This Allen's rule you have to know. According to this rule, the mammals which are surviving in the polar region, in the colder region, they have got shorter limbs. They have got shorter limbs at the ears. That is the body extremities which will come out of the main body. They are short. And they are short just to conserve the heat energy. Just to conserve the heat energy, or you can say to minimize the loss of heat from the body. That is the Allen's rule, asked for 1 mark in the annual exam and MCQ question. Fine. So here we have studied about the adaptation. Adaptation is nothing but adjusting with the existing environment. One set of organisms has to survive, it must adjust, otherwise it must get vanished. It will become extinct, and that will not occur to the maximum level. Organisms, they will try to adapt. Fine. Adaptations are of two types, genotypic adaptations and phenotypic adaptations. Genotypic adaptations will occur through natural selection, which will take place over a long evolutionary period and then will get fixed in the genetic material. Genetically it will get fixed, and generation after generation such characters will get inherited. And phenotypic adaptations, these are non-genetic. Also usually will not get inherited. It is there in the behavior, and some of the physiological changes will help the organism to survive. So we have just discussed one example, that is the kangaroo rat. Kangaroo rat, we will find this rat in America, that is North American desert, Northern American desert we will find. So here it got adapted to the desert mode of life by two main features, that is internal fat. During the internal fat oxidation, water is produced as byproduct, which is sufficient for its survival, and next it will concentrate its nitrogenous waste, that is urine, and then it will eliminate. So by this process it will conserve the water. That is how it will meet the water requirement of its life. And then I told you about the Allen's rule. Allen's rule will apply to those mammals which live in the colder regions. You can take any example. So here the body extremities like ears and the limbs are shorter. They are shorter. Body will be bigger. Okay, it will be concentrated. It will be having a big body, just to conserve the loss of heat energy. Fine. Now let us see some of the examples. Now let me just wipe the board. Now let us go to the next adaptation, that is the aquatic mammals. You know, mammals, they will respire through the lungs, that is pulmonary respiratory system is seen in the mammals. Fine. That you have studied already. Let me come to the point. So aquatic mammals like seals which are present in the polar seas, they have a thick fatty layer below the skin. They have got a thick fatty layer below the skin, and that fatty layer is called as blubber. It is a 1 mark question plus CT point. This blubber acts as an insulator. To keep the body temperature constant. You know what do you mean by insulator? Insulating layer will not allow the body temperature to go outside, and the outside temperature will not enter into the body. That is, it will help to maintain the homeostasis of the body. So this example you have to remember. And then let us know for adaptations which are found in the desert plants. Desert plants are also called as xerophytes. Desert plants are also called as xerophytes, the plants which will grow in the desert region. It is a 3 mark question which is asked in the annual exam, and many MCQ questions can be framed on this. So desert plants, they have got a very thick cuticle layer. The common best example is the Opuntia. Opuntia, cactus, papas curry, what you say, that is the best example to keep in the mind. So it is covered by a thick cuticle layer, and that cuticle layer will prevent the loss of water from the plant body. Fine. And the next adaptation is the stomata. You know that stomata are usually present on the leaves, and they are more on the lower surface of the leaf. So here the stomata, they are present on the stem. Fine. And they are sunken. Sunken stomata are seen, and they are covered by fine cilia. Like you know that the stomata, they are like kidney shaped or bean shaped structure, and structure you have studied already in the plant physiology. Fine. And these stomata, they are present below the epidermis. So here they are present. Sorry, I drew the stomata, let it be. So here they are present. Let me just draw. So here you will see the cells. Okay. And here you will see the epidermis. Fine. And these are covered by fine cilia. Okay. So the rate of transpiration will get reduced. The transpiration process will occur through the stomata. When the water will be evaporating through the stomata, it is trapped by the cilia in the spit. When it is trapped here, the temperature will be less. It will reach a saturation point. So further loss of water is prevented. That is how the sunken stomata will help to reduce the loss of water in the form of transpiration. So all the xerophytes which are well adapted for the xeric mode of life, they have got the sunken stomata which will help to conserve the water. And next adaptation is that these plants will show cressolation acid metabolism of photosynthesis. This you have studied in the first year in plant physiology. Fine. And this method of photosynthesis will enable the plant to keep their stomata closed during the daytime and open during in the absence of light. So daytime when the stomata will remain closed, the loss of water in the form of transpiration also won't be there. So this method also help in conserving the water. And in some of the xerophytes like Opentia, I told you that you have to remember Opentia because we will find them commonly in our surrounding. So Opentia here, the leaves are leaves got modified in the form of spine. The leaves got modified in the form of spine. So the stomata won't be there on the leaves, fine. And the stem got modified in the form of flattened structure. So if you have seen the Opentia, this structure you will remember. The flattened structure which is a modified stem is called phylloclade. It is called phylloclade, and this modifications you have studied in the first year. So this flattened stem which is called phylloclade will help in photosynthesis. As leaves they are modified in the form of spine, and this is to reduce the water loss. And the flattened stem will help in photosynthesis. This is also one of the important adaptation which you see in the desert plant. And usually desert plants have a taproot system. Desert plants have a taproot system which will penetrate deep down in the earth in search of water. A little amount of water when it will get during the rainy season is conserved, of course. So that is about the adaptations of the xerophyte or xeric adaptations, which is asked for 3 marks in the annual exam. What are xerophytic adaptations you have to remember? The plant body is covered by cuticle layer, and you will see sunken stomata, and you will see the cressolation acid metabolism. That is the CAM mode of photosynthesis, where the stomata remain closed during the daytime, and the leaves got modified in some of the xeric plants in the form of spine. So these are the important adaptations which you have to remember. Now let us go to the other adaptations. So here I have taken the halophytes. Halophytes. Already you are familiar with this term. The plants which will grow in a saline water, a water lagging place where the salinity is high. Those are called the halophytes. And in the halophytes we have taken the rhizophora as an example. So these rhizophora from the bottom of the plant. So stem, you will see the buttress roots. That is, the roots will be having thick foldings. Like as if to a pillar we are keeping the supports. Like that roots will develop. Fine. Such roots are called buttress roots. And from the lower part you will see the upgrowths, like this growths you will see. Fine. And on this growths you will see a small respiratory pores. These are called the respiratory pores. Round you will see not like this. You will see like this, respiratory pores. So the roots which will grow against the gravitational force are called nematophores or the respiratory roots. And on this respiratory roots you will see small respiratory pores. And these respiratory pores will help for the exchange of the gases. So it is also one of the important adaptations which we will see in the halophytes. Fine. So halophytes, what are halophytes? These are the plants which will grow under high salinity, and they have got an adaptation of respiratory roots, that is nematophores, which will help in the exchange of the gases. And apart from that you will see here vivipary. The seeds will germinate when the seed is inside the fruit itself. It is also one of the important adaptations. Let me go to the next. See, apart from developing the respiratory roots, the rhizophora has got one more adaptations. Because if the seeds happen to fall, it will fall in a saline large water. So instead, the seeds will germinate inside the fruit itself, and that process is called as vivipary. And that process is called as vivipary. Now next, let us go to the physiological adaptations. So in the physiological adaptations, the best example is the altitude sickness. It is the altitude sickness. So when one moves to the higher altitude, that is about 3,500 meters in the hilly area, the person experiences a sickness called altitude sickness. Sickness called altitude sickness is experienced by the person who will travel to the higher altitude. So the symptom includes the nausea. The person feels like vomiting. That is called the nausea. So the person feels tired. That is the fatigue. And heart palpitation. That is the heart rate will increase. We feel as if we are listening our own heartbeat. So these three are important symptoms of altitude sickness. What are the symptoms of altitude sickness? Nausea, that is feeling like vomiting, fatigue, tiredness, and also the heart palpitation. Why do we experience such altitude sickness? So when you travel to the higher regions, the atmospheric pressure also will be less. The atmospheric pressure will be less, and the oxygen level is also very low. The oxygen level as well as atmospheric pressure both are low. That is why we will experience altitude sickness. So after some time, when we will be staying over there, just the altitude sickness will not be experienced by the person, because the body will get adapted to that environment. How it will get adapted? So first of all, in the body, the RBC cells count will increase. The RBC cell counting will increase, and the binding of hemoglobin with the oxygen affinity will be reduced. That is, the affinity of hemoglobin to bind with the oxygen will be reduced, and then the breathing rate will get increased. The rate of the respiration will get increased. That is how the body will get adjusted with a higher altitude. So usually it is advised by the doctor. So whenever we fall sick, whenever we will be severely affected, whenever we will be ill, severely health factor if one will be facing, at that time doctors will advise us to go to hilly area, because when you go to hilly area, the RBC count will get increased, and also the rate of respiration will increase. Along with this, we have to take some other precautions also. We have to eat healthy, nutritional, balanced diet. Fine. So for this reason, usually the physician will advise us to go for the hilly areas to take to take the rest. So what I told in physiological adaptation, I told you about the altitude sickness. It is a question which is asked in animal theory, plus MCQ questions can be framed on this adaptation. What do you mean by altitude sickness? When the person will go to higher altitude, he will experience certain kinds of symptoms, and those symptoms when the body will experience, that is called the altitude sickness. What are those symptoms? Nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitation. Why do person experience that? It is because of lower atmospheric pressure and low level of oxygen. How the body will get adapted? The RBC count will increase, the affinity of hemoglobin will get reduced, and also the rate of breathing will increase. So today let us finish up to here. So tomorrow let us go to the next aspect. Hope this class you understood, children.